Well, you don't know what you're talking about because not all women are like that, and I'm actually quite different. You don't even know me. When I was growing up, I often came across the statement from various people, to family, friends, strangers. Men are only interested in one thing. Only after one thing. I only care about one thing. And not only was this a sweeping generalization about male nature or men's character, but they weren't saying this was their top priority, saying this is the only thing. And for pretty much, people didn't really bat an eyelid, as the phrase goes. But as soon as a man, like a MGTOW man, starts coming out talking about female nature and making these generalizations like, for example, women are only interested in one thing, or women are very interested in this thing, and so on and so forth, well, you're a misogynist. I've never ever once come across the phrase, women are only interested in one thing. And yet we could equally say that women prioritize utility in much the same way men prioritize sex, reproduction, and physical attractiveness. Now, I feel quite comfortable in saying that unless you're some sort of transsexual, homosexual, or asexual, if you're like most males, then you're a heterosexual man, or a cisgendered man, as a lot of people call it these days, then all men are like that. I won't say they only care about one thing, but I say that they're highly sexual beings, and they prioritize sex, intimacy, to a certain extent, reproduction, and indicators of reproductive qualities like fertility and virtue signals and so on. At the same time, if you're a heterosexual woman, I feel quite comfortable in generalizing and saying that all women are like that. Where women value the utilities, things like money, various resources, whether that be humor, being artistic, being able to craft or make something, the so-called alpha traits of confidence and swagger and charm and things like this. All women find those appealing and they chase them to some extent or another. There can be variations along the spectrums in terms of how much women are hypergamous and they value utility and their actions according to that, as well as variations on the spectrum with men and their polygamy and their actions based on that. Now, based on the statement that I just made and many other men make to some degree or another, which is all women are like that, all women are hypergamous and value utility and certain characters and qualities in men. It's not a bad thing, we're just saying that's how it is. The general response, a common response from manginas, white knights, anti-feminists, MRAs, feminists, tradcons, people, is that actually no, not all women are like that. There are a few unicorns. So as the accusation goes, not all women are like that. This is the accusation we're talking about in this video. Not all women are like that. My first thoughts on the matter is that people should be able to make sweeping generalizations about anything really, as long as they are well-founded and well-justified. For example, a biologist could well say, well, look at this deer or look at this antelope. It seems to me that the antelope are herbivorous, and they would say, oh, hold on, I saw an antelope that was starving on the brink of death, and it was actually eating some rotten meat from a week-old corpse. So actually, no, not all deer are like that. Sorry, no. Yes, okay, sometimes it has been found that herbivorous creatures will eat meat, sometimes in the wild, under certain conditions, yes. But that doesn't detract from the fact that we can look at its digestive system, the foods it generally eats, the biological tools it's been equipped with, that it is a herbivorous creature, indeed. Now, in the same way, we can say with as much rigor, we can make generalizations about male and female nature. We can say that generally, women are hypergamous, and that hypergamy increases with the development of civilization and technology. Now, an example I would like to pursue here is divorce. In Western countries, about 70% of divorces are initiated by women, and at a glance this looks like a political reality. This could reflect the Western culture. But my assertion is that this is to do with the economic development, the technological development. And in order to ascertain whether this has to do with female nature in general, and not just say something that's socially constructed by the cultural environment, we would look to other countries which are undergoing similar economic circumstances. For example, look at China. Its economy is growing quite rapidly, and if you look at the rate of divorce there in terms of how many women initiate divorce, it is roughly 70%. Okay, so that just means that, you know, these Caucasians and these Chinese, they're the same societal conditions. No, they don't. But if that's really not enough, all you have to do is just look around at all the countries which are developing quite rapidly. Asian countries are a good example, like South Korea, for example. You find that divorce is going up, and you find around the world that more women initiate divorce than men. And this is quite ironic, considering they're supposedly the ones who are more committed, as opposed to the men who are commitment phobes. Another example could be the welfare state, the nanny state, and its role subjugating the traditional role of men, and how men are more disposable now because of that. Let's look at the black community in America. You know, a lot of the men are not well-to-do socioeconomically, and if you're not some drug dealer or gangbanger, you're competing with the government welfare, which is practically unconditional, you know, compared to, you know, you don't need to put up with the shit and all that. So a lot of these men are disposable, and a lot of the guys, female children, are brought up by single mothers in the ghettos in America. But it's not only a black thing, is it? It's not only black women. Okay, go to the UK and you can see the slums there. They're basically ghettos. And same situation, man. In fact, in the UK, it's quite common to have there's career mothers, single mothers. They're basically, their life's mission is to pop out a few babies and live off the government money. And same for New Zealand, where I live too. Now, much as you might find differences in life expectancy between various countries which are richer or poorer, for example, in poorer countries, the gap between men and women is a lot smaller in terms of life expectancy, and in more rich countries, the gap between men and women is larger. So the women benefit from civilization development more than the men. And in much the same way, you'll find in more developed countries, the hypergamy is more rampant. And this is because with the feminism and other things like this, the hypergamy has gone more unchecked. There are less checks and balances on hypergamy compared with polygamy. And the opposite for more developing countries, at least with hypergamy. And so you will find that women in developing countries are less hypergamous. What that means is because of different economic conditions, perhaps to a certain extent cultural conditions, which are mostly based on the economic conditions, you find that women appear to be less hypergamous. And in terms of their actions, that could be true. But the fact is, those very same women under different economic conditions will display roughly the same amount of hypergamy and do the same things that the Western women are doing now. And I've given the example of China. You know, 50, 100 years ago, probably weren't acting like that, right? Like they are in China now. South Korea has developed very rapidly. The divorce rate was fucking almost non-existent 60 years ago, when the economy in South Korea, used to be less than Sierra Leone. They were on the fucking bottom of the barrel, okay? And now they're like a top 10 economy in the world. Amazing changes in that country. Not all for the better. But I digress. It comes back to a very common fallacy that people commit, which is, you know, people have changed. And no, people haven't changed. The environment has changed, but people hasn't changed, you know. The biology doesn't change that fast. The environment can, but the biology doesn't. So when it comes to female nature, you know, it's not that there's a difference in the genes so much of, you know, the Caucasian Western woman compared to, you know, the black Sierra Leone lady. You know, they have similar natures. They're all hypergamous, and hypergamy exists on a spectrum. And basically, where you fit on that spectrum would be determined by your upbringing, your community influence, the struggles and strives and suffering you've endured in your life, and how you react to them. Things like, do you become a drug addict, or do you know, study at your university? Your culture, your society, and probably more importantly, your economic conditions, the legal system, are women given privileges, are women treated like princesses, you know, how much power do men have, what's the ratio of the population with men either being killed at war, which makes them more desirable and women less hypergamous. Is there a large variety of men available because there's so many men who aren't dying in war? All of these factors and more go into how hypergamous women are, and they'll never be exactly as hypergamous as each other. It's always going to be on a spectrum. You know, you always have like the good Christian girl who's less hypergamous, or the not so good Catholic girl who's secretly very hypergamous. But all women are like that, which is to say all women are hypergamous to some extent or another. And so this accusation against MGTOW men that not all women are like this, it's really probably the most common one, and you could hear it a lot. And maybe some of the things I've provided in this video could help you, you know, to formulate a good response to that, or just to help you think about these things for yourself. Yeah, those are my comments and criticisms.